The year is 1967, and Hollywood bombshell Jayne Mansfield is cruising down US Route 90 east of New Orleans.
Mansfield, a famous actress and sex symbol of the 1950s and 60s, known for her platinum blonde hair, hourglass figure, and alleged intimate involvement with the Kennedy brothers, was just 34 years old, and though beyond the pinnacle of her fame, her and her family's future looked bright. Unfortunately, however, that bright future would never happen.
America. Jayne Mansfield is dead. Here with ex-husband Mickey Hargitay and their 2 children, she was one of Hollywood's greatest sex symbols. At 33, she had been married 3 times and was the mother of 5 children. The 3 of them were with her in the fatal car crash near New Orleans. They escaped slightly injured. But Jayne, her lawyer friend Sam Brody, and their driver were killed.
You see, it used to be that if you rear-ended a truck trailer and a sedan, your car would go under the truck, and thanks to head trauma, you'd have virtually no chance of surviving.
But after 1967, following Mansfield and her party's tragic death, NHTSA recommended putting these metal bars on trucks so that cars would impact at the engine block instead. In 1970, they issued the regulation right away, saving thousands of lives over the following decades. Except that's not what happened.
Instead, these so-called Mansfield bars weren't required until 1998, and even now, they're only required on the backs of trucks, so hundreds of people are still dying from underride crashes. Why?
Well, at the time of Mansfield's death, there actually was a federal requirement in place for rear underride guards, but the rule was loosely enforced, and there were no standards for strength or effectiveness. In 1970, the same year it was established, NHTSA recommended the installation of rear underride guards on large trucks, but later withdrew its proposal under pressure from the trucking industry and newly elected President Reagan.
And like we said, the requirement for rear guards wasn't implemented until 1998.
According to a June 2023 investigation by ProPublica and Frontline, it wasn't because federal officials weren't aware of the problem. They were. But by their own admission in spring 2023, they had failed to accurately count underride collisions for decades, and federal records obtained by ProPublica show the agency deferred to the wishes of the trucking industry, whose lobbyists claimed the measure would be too expensive to implement.
NHTSA has never been able to properly track underride crashes, in part because it relies on local and state first responder reporting, but has offered little training on how to do it.
Not to mention that only 17 states actually have a field on their accident reports to indicate if an underride accident even occurred. Analysis by ProPublica and Frontline found over 400 people died in underride crashes in 2021, but experts believe this number to be even higher.
It's shocking how this has hurt families and communities all across the country.
New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and Florida Senator Marco Rubio are sponsoring legislation that would require stronger rear guards on tractor trailers and, for the first time, side guards on semis as well.
That bill never made it out of committee. However, they did manage to insert language instructing NHTSA to study side guards into the infrastructure bill signed by President Joe Biden in 2021. And in spring 2023, NHTSA released this 100-page report titled Side Impact Guards for Combination Truck Trailers Cost-Benefit Analysis.
You might have to workshop that title a bit.
The report was surprisingly unenthusiastic about side guards. Here on page 6, NHTSA says the side guards would cost the trucking industry between $970 million and $1.2 billion a year, if you include the extra fuel burned because of added weight. This would prevent just 17.2 deaths and 69 serious injuries.
That's not because they thought the side guards would be ineffective. It's because in their analysis, the number of preventable crashes they used was just 19 a year. So in their eyes, it wasn't a big enough problem. But not everyone agreed.
2 months later, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety called on NHTSA to, quote, reconsider its dramatic underestimate of the number of lives that could be saved by requiring side underride guards for large trucks. They believed that because there were 488 deaths a year from side collisions into truck trailers, the number of side underrides had to be way above 19.
So how is it possible that NHTSA got such a low estimate? By excluding tons of crashes, like any crash with more than one car or more than one truck, or any crash above 40 miles per hour.
Look at this table on page 27. If you include higher speed crashes, the number jumps to 100. In short, the data was sus. That same month, ProPublica and Frontline released the investigation we mentioned previously, and it immediately caught the attention of its exact target audience, the Advisory Committee on Underride Protection.
Yes, as you can guess from the name, this is a specific advisory committee that is laser focused on underride crashes. They were created by the 2021 infrastructure bill and technically work for NHTSA, but they're not afraid to throw their bosses under the bus.
In the summer of 2024, ACUP produced a 400-page report on underride bars. The report is split into two parts. First, a majority report that takes dead aim at NHTSA's 2023 cost-effectiveness estimates, saying they should be withdrawn. It even cites the Frontline investigation and the Insurance Institute report. Then, there's a minority report, arguing more evidence is still needed. The dueling reports make sense when you consider that ACUP is made of both safety advocates and industry stakeholders.
So that brings us to today. The battle over underride protection is still going strong, with safety advocates pushing for side guards and the trucking industry concerned about the costs and potential unintended consequences of attaching metal bars to the sides of truck trailers across the country.
Digging through the hundreds of pages of government documents and crash tests, it's painful to see the names of the real people suffering horrible deaths under trucks every year. But it's also clear that NHTSA is closer than ever before to finally putting underride fatalities in the history books for good.